My name is Clara Whitmore, and I was 32 years old when my sister called me a failure in front of my entire family, right before my father opened the letter I had spent half my life pretending did not exist. It happened on a Sunday evening in my parents' dining room, under the same brass chandelier that had hung over every birthday, every holiday, every family argument we were told to forget by dessert. My mother had set the table with the good plates, the ones with blue flowers around the edges. My father had opened a bottle of wine he usually saved for guests he wanted to impress. My sister, Natalie, sat at the center of the table as if the dinner had been arranged around her, which, in a way, it had. She had just been promoted to senior director at a private real estate firm in Boston, and my mother had decided the family needed to celebrate. There was roasted chicken, rosemary potatoes, green beans with almonds, and one of those expensive cakes from the bakery downtown with gold dust on the frosting. Across the top, in looping white letters, it said, "Congratulations, Natalie." Nobody had asked me about my week. Nobody had asked how my small tutoring center was doing. Nobody had asked why I looked tired or why I kept checking my phone under the table. That was normal. I was not the daughter people built dinners around. I was the daughter they called when someone needed a ride from the airport, when my mother's printer stopped working, when my father forgot a doctor's appointment, when Natalie needed someone to watch her dog because she had real responsibilities. I had learned to be useful because useful was the closest thing to loved I could reliably get. So I sat there in a simple green dress, smiling when expected, passing the potatoes when asked, listening to Natalie talk about her office with glass walls, her new salary, her corner parking space, her boss who said she had executive instincts. My mother glowed like Natalie's promotion had happened to her personally. My father smiled politely, but he was quieter than usual. I noticed that because my father was never quiet at dinners like that. He usually filled silence with opinions. That night, he kept looking toward the old cabinet behind him, the one where my grandmother's china used to be kept before she died. I thought he was tired. I thought maybe his knee hurt again. I did not know that inside that cabinet, in the bottom drawer under a stack of faded tablecloths, there was an envelope with my name on it. I did not know he had found it 3 days earlier in a box of my grandfather's old papers. I did not know he had read it alone in his workshop and cried so hard my mother found him sitting on the concrete floor with the letter open in his lap. I only knew that when Natalie turned to me with a smile sharp enough to cut bread and said, "So, Clara, are we celebrating anything in your life soon, or are we still pretending tutoring other people's children is a career?" Everyone at the table went quiet in the familiar way they always did when Natalie decided to perform. My cousin Bethany gave a nervous little laugh. My Uncle Mark suddenly became interested in his wine. My mother said, "Natalie," but softly, not as a warning, more like she was embarrassed by the timing, not the cruelty. Natalie leaned back in her chair, enjoying the room. She was 35, polished, beautiful, with honey blonde hair and a diamond bracelet that flashed every time she moved her wrist. She had always known how to look expensive even before she was. I had always known how to disappear even when I was standing right there. "I'm just saying what everyone thinks," Natalie said. "She's 32, no husband, no house, no real job. She rents 2 rooms above a laundromat and teaches fractions to middle schoolers whose parents pay late. At some point, Clara, you have to admit you made choices. Not all of us can be successful, but you don't have to act like being broke is noble." The words did not surprise me. That was almost worse. They landed in places that had already been bruised. I stared at my plate, at the chicken I had barely touched, and felt my hands go cold under the table. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell her that my tutoring center served children who had been written off by teachers, parents, and test scores. I wanted to tell her that the boy who cried over long division in September had brought me a homemade card in May because he passed math for the first time in his life. I wanted to tell her that worth was not measured in parking spaces and glass offices, but in my family, defending yourself only made them say you were sensitive. So I did what I had done since childhood. I reached for my water glass and swallowed the words. Then Natalie laughed and added, "Honestly, Dad, If anyone is proof that love and patience don't pay, it's Clara. She's the family failure who still thinks kindness is a business plan. The room went completely still. I remember the sound of my fork touching the plate, a tiny silver click. I remember my mother closing her eyes. I remember my father's hand tightening around the stem of his wine glass until his knuckles turned white. I stood up. Not dramatically, not fast, just enough that my chair scraped softly against the rug. "I should go," I said. My mother opened her eyes. "Clara, sit down. Don't make this uncomfortable." That sentence did something to me. Not Natalie's insult, not the laughter. My mother asking me, again, to protect everyone from the discomfort of what had been done to me. I looked at her. "I didn't make it uncomfortable." Natalie rolled her eyes. "Here we go." I picked up my bag from the back of the chair. My phone buzzed again inside it. I knew without looking it was probably a message from Mrs. Alvarez asking if I could wait another week for her payment. Her daughter, Sophia, had been coming to me for reading help since January. I had already told Mrs. Alvarez not to worry. That was the kind of failure I was, apparently. I had taken one step toward the hallway when my father spoke. "Clara, wait." His voice was different. Not loud, not angry, but something in it stopped me where I stood. Natalie sighed. "Dad, please don't turn this into one of those speeches about being nice. I was joking." "No," he said. Everyone looked at him. My father slowly pushed his chair back and stood. He was 64 then, still broad-shouldered from decades of running his repair shop, though his hair had gone mostly gray and his hands had started to shake when he was tired. His name was Thomas Whitmore, and all my life I had known him as a practical man. He fixed broken things: cars, shelves, sinks, lawnmowers, the old heater that rattled every winter. Feelings were the one thing he never seemed to know how to repair. He loved us, I think, but he loved with work, gloves on. He paid bills. He changed oil. He put gas in our cars without mentioning it. But if you cried, he looked frightened, then irritated, as if sadness were a machine making a noise he could not locate. That night he looked at me as if he had finally found the noise. "Natalie," he said, "you will not call your sister a failure in my house again." Natalie blinked. "Excuse me?" My mother looked at him quickly. "Thomas." He ignored both of them and walked to the old cabinet. He opened the bottom drawer and took out a cream-colored envelope. My name was written across the front in blue ink: Clara Ann Whitmore. I recognized the handwriting before I recognized the envelope. My chest tightened. It was my grandfather's handwriting. Grandpa Joseph had died 12 years earlier when I was 20. He had been the only person in my family who could sit in silence without making it feel like punishment. He smelled like sawdust and peppermint gum. He taught me how to sand wood with the grain, how to make pancakes without measuring, and how to tell when someone was lying by what they refused to answer. He used to call me steady girl. Not pretty girl, not smart girl, steady. At 16, I hated it a little. At 32, I would have given almost anything to hear it one more time. My father held the envelope like it weighed more than paper. "What is that?" Natalie asked, annoyed now. "A letter," my father said. "One I should have opened years ago." My stomach dropped. "Dad." He looked at me. His eyes were wet. I had seen my father cry only twice in my life. Once at his mother's funeral, and once when his shop almost burned down. Seeing it now made the room feel unsafe. "Clara," he said softly, "I'm sorry. I found it in your grandfather's toolbox." I knew then. For a second, I was 16 again, standing in the cold hallway outside my parents' bedroom, hearing my mother cry through the door. I was 16, wearing my school sweatshirt, holding a stack of scholarship forms, listening to my parents talk about selling the house because the repair shop was drowning in debt after my father's business partner stole from him and disappeared. I was 16, hearing my mother say, "How will we tell the girls?" And my father answer, "We won't. Natalie has applications due. Clara will understand. Clara always understands." I was 16, learning that being the understanding child meant being the child nobody protected from the truth. My father opened the envelope. "Don't," I whispered. But he did. He unfolded the letter with careful hands. There were other papers inside, too. Receipts, old pay stubs, a copy of a bank deposit slip, my old handwriting on a yellowed sheet of notebook paper. I could see it from across the room, slanted and rushed, the way I wrote when I was trying not to cry. My father looked at everyone at the table, then down at the page. "This letter was written by Clara when she was 16, he said. "She wrote it to her grandfather, my father. She asked him not to show it to me unless one day we forgot what she had done." My mother's face changed. What she had done? My father swallowed. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run out the front door, down the porch steps, into my old car, and drive until the house disappeared from the rearview mirror. Because secrets are strange things. You can bury them for years, convince yourself they are dead, and then one person lifts the soil and suddenly they are breathing in the room with you. My father began to read. "Grandpa, please don't be mad. I know you told me not to worry about grown-up problems, but I heard Mom and Dad talking. I know the shop is in trouble. I know Dad might lose the house. I know Natalie doesn't know, and I don't want her to know because she has her auditions and college applications, and she'll cry if everything changes." Natalie sat up straighter. "What is this?" My father kept reading. "I talked to Mrs. Palmer at the library. She said I can work there after school 3 days a week if I get permission. I also talked to Mr. Collins at the diner, and he said I can bus tables on weekends if I don't tell anyone I'm only 16. I know that part is wrong, but I can do it. I don't need the summer writing program. Please tell them I changed my mind. Please don't let Mom use the money she saved for me. Put it toward the mortgage or Dad's loan. If anyone asks, say I didn't want to go." My mother made a sound I had never heard from her before. My father's voice broke, but he forced himself to continue. "I'm not doing this because I'm good. I'm doing it because I'm scared. I don't want Dad to lose the shop. I don't want Mom to cry in the laundry room. I don't want Natalie to hate everyone because she had to leave her school. Maybe I'm the one who can handle it best because nobody expects much from me anyway. That sounds sad, but I don't mean it sad. I mean, maybe that makes me useful." The word useful hit me harder than failure. My cousin Bethany covered her mouth. My Uncle Mark looked down. Natalie stared at me as if I had become a stranger at the table. My father set the letter down for a moment, pressed his fingers to his eyes, then picked up the receipts. "I didn't know," he said, not to the room, but to me. "I swear to God, Clara, I didn't know. I thought Dad loaned us the money. I thought he pulled it from savings. He told me it was between him and me, and I was too ashamed to ask questions." My mother whispered, "How much?" My father looked at the papers. Over 2 years, Clara gave nearly $23,000. The dining room disappeared for a second. $23,000 does not sound like a fortune to some people. To a 16-year-old girl working at a library, a diner, and later cleaning offices before school, it was everything. It was weekends. It was sleep. It was the summer program in Vermont I had dreamed about since 7th grade. It was the writing contest I never entered because the entrance fee suddenly felt selfish. It was skipping lunches and telling friends I wasn't hungry. It was wearing the same winter coat for 3 years because the zipper only stuck sometimes. It was telling Natalie I didn't care about prom so she could use my share of the dress money for a pageant gown. It was watching my father keep his shop, my mother keep her home, and Natalie keep her life, while everyone agreed I simply lacked ambition. My father lifted another paper. "There's more." "Dad, please," I said, and this time my voice cracked. He looked at me with such pain that I almost forgave him right there, which would have been too easy and too soon. "I need to say it," he said. "I let this family believe a lie about you. I need to say it." Natalie stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. So she had some teenage job. We all worked." My father turned to her, and I had never seen him look at Natalie that way. Not cruelly, worse, clearly. "Sit down." She froze. For the first time in my life, Natalie obeyed him without arguing. My father read the second page. It was not my letter. It was my grandfather's note, written 2 years after mine. "Tommy, If you are reading this, it means I am gone or too tired to keep your pride safe. Clara did not just help you, she carried you. She gave up things a child should not have been asked to give up, and she did it without making you feel small. That is a kind of strength most grown men never learn. Do not mistake her quiet for lack of worth. Do not let Susan forget. Do not let Natalie spend her life standing on Clara's sacrifice and calling herself taller. The room went silent after that. My mother was crying openly now, not delicate tears, ugly ones, the kind that change your face. She looked at me like she was seeing not her adult daughter, but every younger version of me she had overlooked. Me at 16, coming home after dark and saying I was at the library. Me at 17, falling asleep at the kitchen table over homework. Me at 18, smiling when Natalie got the car they said I did not need because I was low maintenance. Me at 20, standing at Grandpa's funeral with dry eyes because I had already learned to grieve privately. Clara, my mother said. I shook my head once, not because I didn't want her to speak, but because I could not survive an apology yet, not in that room, not with Natalie watching. But Natalie was not watching me anymore. She was looking at the receipts. Her face had gone pale with anger, though not the kind I wanted. She was not ashamed. She was cornered. So what? She said. She helped the family. That doesn't make her successful now. The cruelty of it was so pure that even my mother stopped crying for a second. Natalie looked around the table, desperate to regain the room. Are we all supposed to pretend she's some hero because she worked a few jobs as a teenager? Dad, you paid for my college because I got into a good school. That was an investment. Clara chose her life. She chose to stay small. I felt something inside me settle. For years, Natalie's words had power because some part of me feared they were true. I feared I had stayed small. I feared I had built a life out of crumbs and called it purpose. I feared that the tutoring center, with its peeling blue door and second-hand desks, was just a pretty name for not becoming anything impressive. But hearing her say it after my father read that letter did not break me. It clarified everything. I was not small. I had been carrying people who called me weak because they never saw the weight. My father folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. Natalie, he said, the college money we gave you came from the account your sister helped refill. Natalie's lips parted. My mother whispered, Thomas. No, he said. We are done sanding the truth down so nobody gets splinters. He looked at Natalie. When the shop recovered, your mother and I put money aside again. We used it for your tuition, your apartment, your first car, and part of the deposit on your condo. We told ourselves Clara didn't need as much because she didn't ask. We called her independent because it sounded better than neglected. My chest hurt. My mother covered her face. My father turned to me. And when you wanted to open the tutoring center, you asked me for a loan. I looked down. It had been 4 years earlier. I had come to him with a business plan, printed and bound at the office supply store. I needed $15,000 to lease the space, buy materials, and cover the first 3 months. He read the first page and said tutoring was not a real business. He told me to apply at a school district if I wanted stability. 2 weeks later, he gave Natalie $20,000 toward her kitchen renovation because real estate is a smart investment. I said no, he said, his voice rough. You asked me once in your whole life for help, and I said no. Nobody spoke. I remembered walking out of his workshop that day with my business plan under my arm, feeling foolish for believing, even briefly, that he might choose me. I opened the center anyway. I used credit cards, a small community grant, and a loan from Rachel, my college roommate, who gave me the money with one condition. When this works, don't act surprised. It worked, but barely. Not because I was bad at it, because helping people who could not always pay is not a quick path to comfort. I had 12 students that first month, then 20, then 36. Some paid full price, some paid half, some paid in installments. One grandmother paid me once with a bag of groceries and cried because she was embarrassed. I took the groceries and told her tomatoes were my favorite, though they weren't. That was the center Natalie mocked. My phone buzzed again in my bag. This time I took it out. It was not Mrs. Alvarez. It was an email notification. The subject line read, State Education Innovation Grant, Final Decision. My hands went still. I had applied 6 months earlier and told no one. Not my parents, not Natalie, not even my staff, because hope is easier to carry privately until it becomes real. The grant would allow me to expand the center, hire 2 full-time teachers, build a free after-school reading program, and move out of the rooms above the laundromat into a real storefront near the public library. I had spent nights writing the proposal after 12-hour days. I had rewritten the budget until numbers blurred. I had included stories of my students without names, careful to protect their dignity. I had wanted it so badly I trained myself not to think about it. I opened the email at the dining table. Dear Ms. Whitmore, we are pleased to inform you. The words swam. I sat down because my knees could not be trusted. My father noticed. Clara? I read the first paragraph again, then the second, then the number, $250,000. For a moment, I forgot everyone else existed. $250,000 for the center, for the children, for the blue door and the second-hand desks and every parent who paid late but tried, for the failure who still thought kindness was a business plan. Natalie, unable to stand not being the center of any silence, said, What now? I looked up. My voice was quiet. I got the grant. My mother wiped her face. What grant? The state education grant, for the center. How much? My father asked. I looked at Natalie when I answered. Not because I wanted revenge, because some truths deserve an audience. $250,000, Bethany gasped. Uncle Mark said, Good Lord. My father sat down heavily in his chair. My mother started crying again, but differently this time. Natalie laughed once. That's not income, it's funding. Yes, I said, for expansion, staff, a free literacy program, a new location. Nobody knew what to do with my calm. I put my phone face down on the table and looked at my sister. You called me a failure 5 minutes before I found out the state chose my work as one of the most promising community education projects in the region. That doesn't make me better than you, Natalie, but it does mean you don't get to define success for me anymore. Her face hardened. You always do this. I almost smiled. Do what? Act humble so everyone feels sorry for you. That sentence used to work. It used to pull me back into explaining, softening, apologizing. This time it sounded like a door closing on the wrong side of me. I'm not humble, I said. I'm tired. I turned to my father. Can I have the letter? He nodded quickly and handed it to me with both hands. The paper felt fragile and warm from where he had held it. My 16-year-old handwriting stared back at me. I had not seen that girl clearly in years. I had made her into a vague memory, a hard-working shadow, someone I used to be before life became bills and rent and lesson plans. But there she was, asking her grandfather to protect her parents' pride, asking not to be noticed, asking only that the family stay standing. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to tell her she did not have to earn love by disappearing. My mother reached toward me. Clara, I'm so sorry. I stepped back. Her hand fell. I believe you, I said, but I can't carry your guilt tonight. It was the most honest thing I had ever said to her. My father stood again. Then let me carry it. I looked at him. His face was ruined with regret, but regret is not repair. I knew that now. Regret is a feeling. Repair is a practice. I don't need a speech, Dad. He nodded slowly. Then I'll give you action. Natalie scoffed. Oh, here we go. My father did not look at her. The shop is mine outright now. The building, the land, the equipment. Your grandfather left it to me, and I nearly lost it because I was too proud to see what was happening under my own roof. He took a breath. I'm transferring ownership of the old annex to Clara's center, the one by the library. My mouth went dry. Thomas, my mother whispered. He shook his head. No, I should have done it 4 years ago when she asked for help. The annex is empty. It has been empty for 6 years. It needs repairs, but it's solid. It's near the schools, near the bus line. It belongs in better hands than mine. Natalie stood again. Are you insane? That property is worth at least $300,000. My father turned to her. Yes. You can't just give it to her because you feel guilty. I can, he said, and I will, because guilt finally pointed at the right debt. Natalie looked at my mother. Say something. My mother looked at me, then at Natalie, and something painful moved across her face. Maybe she finally saw the two daughters she had raised, one taught to expect applause, the other taught not to need it. I think, my mother said slowly, your father should have given Clara help a long time ago. Natalie stared at her as if betrayed. I almost laughed at the strange shape of justice. Natalie felt robbed by the idea of me receiving something that had been owed to me for years. But I did not feel triumphant. That surprised me. I thought if my family ever saw the truth, I would feel victorious. Instead, I felt exhausted. The kind of tired that comes after setting down a bag you forgot you were carrying, only to realize your shoulders still hurt. I'm not saying yes tonight, I told my father. He blinked. What? The annex. I'm not accepting anything tonight. Not as guilt, not as a scene after a bad dinner. If you mean it, call my attorney tomorrow. We'll do it properly. Independent appraisal, clean documents, no family strings. My father looked at me for a long moment. Then something like pride appeared in his face, but quieter than pride had ever been in our family. Of course, he said. Natalie grabbed her purse. This is unbelievable. No one stopped her. That was new. She looked around the room, waiting for my mother to ask her to stay, waiting for my father to soften, waiting for someone to restore the old order where Natalie's discomfort mattered more than my dignity. Nobody did. So she left. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the chandelier. For a few seconds, we all sat inside the echo. Then my Uncle Mark cleared his throat and said, Clara, I'd like to donate to the center. It was awkward, kind. Too late. Still something. Bethany nodded quickly. Me too, and I can help with painting if you move into the annex. People began talking then, not loudly, not comfortably, but sincerely. My mother brought tissues. My father sat with his hands folded around the letter copies. The cake with Natalie's name on it remained untouched at the center of the table, gold dust shining under the chandelier like a joke nobody wanted to make. I left 20 minutes later. My father walked me to my car. The night was cool, and the porch light buzzed above us the way it always had. For a moment, we were both quiet. Across the street, someone's dog barked. The world had not changed, though mine had cracked open. I don't know how to be forgiven for this, he said. I unlocked my car. Maybe don't start there, he nodded. Start with telling the truth when I'm not in the room, I said. His eyes filled again. I can do that. And don't make me responsible for making Mom feel better. I won't. And don't call Natalie cruel like you didn't help build the room where she learned it. That one landed hard. He looked down at the porch steps. You're right. I waited for the old instinct to apologize for being too direct. It rose in me, familiar and automatic. Then passed. My father reached into his pocket and took out my grandfather's old carpenter pencil. It was short, worn nearly halfway down with bite marks near the end. Grandpa had used those pencils all his life, tucked behind his ear, marking wood with small, precise lines. I found this with the letter, Dad said. I thought you should have it. I took it. That almost broke me more than the apology. Thank you, I said. When I drove away, I did not cry until I reached the traffic light by the library. Then I pulled over and sobbed so hard I had to put the car in park. I cried for the 16-year-old girl who worked until her feet blistered and told everyone she was fine. I cried for the summer program I never attended. I cried for Grandpa, who had kept my secret because I asked him to, even though he must have known it would cost me. I cried for every family dinner where I had made myself small enough to survive the room. Then I wiped my face, drove to the tutoring center, and unlocked the blue door above the laundromat. The room smelled like dry erase markers and old carpet. The chairs were stacked from Friday's reading group. A multiplication chart hung crooked on the wall. On my desk was a sticky note from Sofia Alvarez, written in careful pencil. Miss Clara, I read 2 pages by myself. See you Monday. I stood there holding Grandpa's pencil and the grant email open on my phone, and for the first time that night, I smiled. The next few months did not become magically easy. Families rarely transform because of one dinner. My mother apologized too much at first, in ways that still asked me to comfort her. I had to tell her no more than once. My father did call my attorney the next morning. He did get the annex appraised. He did transfer it cleanly with no conditions. He also came by every Saturday to fix what needed fixing, and for once he did not act like repairs were a substitute for words. He said the words too, awkwardly, imperfectly, often while looking at a wall instead of my face, but he said them. Natalie did not speak to me for almost 6 months. Then she sent a text that said, "Hope you're enjoying being the victim." I deleted it. Not because it didn't hurt, because some hooks only work if you bite down. The new center opened the following spring. We painted the annex a warm cream color and put bright blue letters over the door. Whitmore Learning House. Not because I wanted the family name there, but because I wanted to change what it meant. The first week, we enrolled 83 students. We hired 2 teachers, 1 reading specialist, and a retired math professor who insisted he was just helping out, and then showed up every day with his own coffee mug. Mrs. Alvarez cried when she saw the free reading room. Sophia ran straight to the beanbags and picked up a book like the place had been built specifically for her, which, in many ways, it had. At the opening, my father stood near the back in a clean work shirt, hands in his pockets, looking overwhelmed. My mother arranged cookies on a table and kept asking people if they needed napkins. Uncle Mark donated books. Bethany painted a mural in the hallway. Natalie did not come. I did not expect her to. Just before the ribbon cutting, my father walked up to me holding a small frame. Inside was my secret letter. Not the original. A copy. The original was locked safely in my desk because some things are not decorations, but the copy was there, with Grandpa's note beneath it. Do not mistake her quiet for lack of worth. My father handed it to me. I thought maybe it belongs here, he said. I looked at the frame, then at him. It does, he swallowed. I should have opened it years ago. Yes, I said. He nodded, accepting the answer without defending himself. That mattered more than any perfect apology. After the ceremony, when everyone was eating cookies and touring the classrooms, I walked alone into the small office at the back. Sunlight came through the window and fell across the desk Grandpa had once built for my father's shop. Dad had refinished it for me without being asked. I set the framed letter on the shelf where I could see it from my chair. For years, I thought that letter was proof of what I had lost. My childhood, my chance to leave, my family's attention, my own belief that I was allowed to want more. But standing in that office, listening to children laugh down the hall, I understood something else. The letter was also proof that I had always been more than what they called me. Before anyone applauded, before any grant committee approved me, before my father finally spoke, before my mother finally saw, before Natalie's insult lost its power, I had been strong. Not loudly, not beautifully, not in a way anyone rewarded, but steadily. That evening, after the last guest left, I locked the front door of the center and stood under the blue sign. My father offered to walk me to my car. I let him. We crossed the parking lot slowly. You know, he said, your grandfather used to say you were the steady one. I smiled. I remember. I didn't understand what he meant. And now? He looked back at the building, at the warm lights glowing through the windows at the place that existed because a failed daughter had refused to stop believing in children nobody else had time for. Now I think he meant you were the one holding the whole table up. I thought about that family dinner. Natalie's voice, my mother's silence, my father opening the envelope, the cake nobody ate, the old chandelier, the word failure hanging in the room right before the truth walked in. Then I thought about Sophia reading 2 pages by herself, about the 83 students, about Grandpa's pencil in my desk drawer, about the locked original letter, no longer a secret, no longer a wound I had to hide. "I'm not holding that table anymore," I said. My father looked at me, and after a moment he nodded. "Good," he said. "You've got your own." He was right, I did.